So I'm going to start the meeting, commence the meeting. This is Thursday, August 21st, and this is the RTM Public Works Committee special meeting held virtually. First of all, I'd like to give a thank you to Jeff Grouse. He's really stepping up here today. He's not only serving as co-host, but he's also going to be our secretary, because the secretary and alternate that was to come on and do that for us today have told me they're not going to be coming to today's meeting. So I asked Jeff, who was next online anyway, if he would
stepping from the bullpen.
So he's stepping in from the bullpen, and he'll be doing the secretarial duties. Thank you very much.
Let's hear it for the pinch hitters. Thank you, Jeff.
Okay. I'm going to try and stick close to the agenda here because it is a special meeting. I did put together some chairman's report comments, which I'll try and get through as quickly as I can for the interest of time. The Board of Selectmen has officially decommissioned the Great Island Advisory Committee. So Mark Adaletta can return to a normal life. Congratulations, Mark.
Thank you.
Welcome back to civilization.
Yes, it's good to be relieved.
Thanks for all your hard work, Mark.
Thank you.
The Board of Selectmen has also officially accepted the Great Island Master Plan. Now, acceptance is just that. They just accepted the plan for what's in it, and it's now for them to digest all of that and start to decide what steps they're going to take to that plan. So this is to be continued, to say the least. Okay. If you have a chance, I don't know if any of you have, it's an 82 page document that they put together for the master plan. And they have a specific number of things in there that are for geared specifically to what they're characterizing as early access. Okay, and so that will be the first set of things that they're going to start to look at and go after. Just in general terms, early access encompasses site work, utilities, paving, furnishings, although we did already buy some furnishings, plantings, and that has a guesstimate of $7 to $11 million. And then right behind that, renovated restroom. The plan called for putting one in the root cellar. Put the root restrooms in the root cellar, and that's another $2 to $3 million. My own guess is that they're going to be anxious to get started, which means that they may very well be coming to the RTM for what is or would be an off-cycle expenditure, something that.
Rolf, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I'm hearing a lot of crosstalk. I don't know if anybody has something playing in the background.
Yeah, you know what? Let me mute. It's probably me.
I'm sorry about that. Sorry to interrupt, Rolf.
That's all right. Are you hearing me all right?
I hear you fine.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I was saying I think it's a good possibility that this would be an off-cycle expenditure, because if it goes through the normal budget process, that wouldn't get through and voted on until May. And I don't think they want to lose all that time. And so that's why I think that possibility is a good possibility. Okay, moving on. You'll like this information, I think. The Sewer Commission has proposed a service increase of up to 0%. That's right, 0%, meaning they're recommending no increase to the sewer service fee for this coming year. Good news, huh? So I think they're starting to see some of the fruits of their labor with trying to curtail I&I, and that relates to all the bonding and the work that's been done over the last several years. And they're now moving into phase 3 in that regard. And then, of course, coming up soon will be they'll be having a hearing about the whole sump pump initiative, if you will. And you're all familiar with that because we met with them about that. And I think they're also going to hopefully get something together by way of an ordinance that may come to us in the October meeting. I sent a little prodding email to Ed Gentile today, and he said, thanks for the reminder. And I, gave him an idea what the timing is like. We only have 2 more meetings, regular meetings of the RTM left in this year, and then we go into the elections. So if they want to try and get that moving on this side of the year, those 2 meetings, that's the window. So I think he's going to try and reinitiate his energy towards that. We'll see what happens. The first selectman announced that he has hired a sidewalk consultant, and that the consultant would start taking inventory of the sidewalks in Darien. Where that goes from there, we'll have to stand by and see. Okay. Heights Crossing development is near completion. The Goddard School will open in September. The apartment tenants are moving in as we speak, and stores will be opening soon. There's also new traffic light software for that intersection at Heights Road and the Hollow Tree Ridge Road. And they're coordinating all of those lights with this new software to West Avenue to Heights Road, and then the traffic lights where the commuter parking lot enters and exits, and of course opposite from that where the apartment complex is. Used to be Avalon. I don't know what it's called now. I haven't kept up with that. But all of those lights with this new software are supposed to be coordinated to enhance for a more efficient traffic flow. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops. The plan of conservation and development public hearing is called for not this coming, but coming Thursday, September 4th at 7 p.m. at Town Hall Auditorium. What's on the agenda roughly is a review of the survey, some exhibits about things, I guess, related to the plan of conservation and development, and some group conversations that they're going to organize. Past that, I can't tell you much, but it's coming up. The original plan called for actually 2 public hearings, if you will, that should have been conducted a while ago, but something happened with their calendar and their schedule where they've now moved this to September 4th, and apparently it will be just the 1 hearing. So if you have an interest about planning conservation and development, that's your last shot.
Hey, Rolf, question on that. Is there a group that's running that, or is that a
Well,
consultant?
they hired a consultant,
They being the Board of Selectmen or
no, being the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Planning and Zoning Commission. Got it.
And we met with them.
I remember.
Okay, all right, I remember too. So that's that. One last thing, just a little thing. I was invited and attended on July 22nd, a meeting of the Swap Shop volunteer team. And the room was pretty full, that room 119 with all the tables that are arranged around in the square. Pretty much every chair was with someone in it. John Zagrodsky was there, and Carolyn, who was one of the original founders of the Swap Shop, was there. She's
Carolyn
not
Bain.
Carolyn Bain,
yeah,
right?
yeah, Carolyn Bain. Thank you, Frank. She was, again, very instrumental when it was formulated years ago. She's not officially per se part of the Swap Shop, but because of her past experience and knowledge, she's chiming in with them here and there. Carolyn Lewis has agreed to become on their mailing list because that's part of her purview in the assignments that we have as a committee, and I will be on the mailing list as well. So thank you, Carolyn. Be interesting to see. I mean, they talked about, what they could do better, to get articles and things in quickly, to store them in an efficient manner so they can get them out early in the morning without much work and labor, and do the same for what isn't purchased to get it back into the Quonset hut in the evening and lock it up for the next day. So that was a big concern. They're also trying to connect with other organizations to take some of their overflow, if you will. Apparently they have a lot of glassware. And so they're trying to hook up with other organizations that could use glassware. And apparently there is one. And so they can give that off to them and free up some space and move on. Very nice group, very energetic. And I look forward to maintaining a contact with them. Okay. Okay. So the primary reason here is to have one last discussion as a precursor to our September 11th meeting with Ed Gentile. I mentioned this in the emails where, this is really new territory. This has not been done before, where we're going to meet with Ed before he starts putting his budget together. In the past, we've been late to the table there, where he's already done his budget, and then we say, okay, can we meet? And he's like, yeah, but budget's done. So our intent, or my intent at least, is to have this to be a discussion about what we see that happened last year in the budget that we're concerned about, and hear what he's concerned about coming up on the new budget, and at least just sound out those issues and concerns that we might all have, and maybe just get some idea from him, if we can, how he's going to approach these things in the new upcoming budget for the 26-27 year. So the one thing that is something that's still in my mind is in the transfer station and recycling. We are definitely collecting money for incoming waste, and we're also paying for money going out on the waste. But I sent out an analysis just on that particular aspect, and between the revenues coming in and the expenditures, last year's budget had a deficit of $446,000, which was a 25% increase over the previous year. So, I'd like to get an update from Ed about, how that's going. He's apparently seeing more and more volume of of incoming waste. And of course, those carting companies pay a fee to bring it in that's higher than what we pay with our company to take it out and take it to where it's going, which is basically the incinerator. But even despite that, there are so many other different things that fall within this bucket, if you will. Professional services, solid waste disposal services, hazardous waste disposal, facility repair and maintenance, operating supplies, public information materials. Some of these things are small items, certainly. But in the revenues, of course, the tipping fees, sale of compost, which is not big money, sale of recyclables, which basically he brought in last year as flat. Okay, so he's saying we're not making anything on the sale of recyclables or any increased revenue from the sale of recyclables. So I'd like to get just a rundown from him about how he sees that with this upcoming budget season. The other thing is, all right, so I discussed the waste management. The building management last year went from 930
Hey, Rob.
79. Yeah,
Rob, just before we move on from waste management, because I was looking at it.
sure.
Are we commenting on pieces now, or did you want to do it all at the end?
No. We can take this one by one. If you have a comment, chime in.
I mean, I was just very interested in the tipping fees because that was a big discussion the last time we met, and I noticed
Yeah.
he's got them going up by 13%, which is good. I mean, how aggressive can you move those things? But the interesting thing to me is that the disposal fees were going up by 16%. So I guess one simple question is, can you match them up, right? Is there any reason like if our disposal fees are going up by 16%, then presumably somewhere in the chain it's going in the market, if you will, it's going up by 16. So I would love to have them tell us why we couldn't raise.
Yeah,
Well, one, I'd like to understand the cause of the 16.
yeah.
I think that's a good. I don't understand the cause. I assume it's market forces. But then, assuming they are market forces, then why wouldn't we raise at least as much for the tipping? The two numbers are not at all in proportion, so it won't matter a lot. Jeff, sorry, I think you had a point.
No, I agree. I agree with you completely. And the forecasted numbers for, well, so we need to understand what the actuals for 2025 full year were. And
Right.
because the forecast that she gave in the budget season actually had tipping fees doubling. So
Hmm.
we had, and it was in fact, again, so I've got a set of analysis that show that is based on what we found, because throughout the year, contrary to our budget, we were overperforming because we're getting all this waste coming in from other communities, et cetera. And so
Yep.
even without increasing our tipping fee rate, the volume was driving overperformance in terms of the revenue we've gotten in
Yep.
at a much higher rate actually than the cost increase. And the cost increase was primarily due to, from the budget, was due to volume, not rate, because the rate was set from the contract.
Which gets to another question when I saw the 13%. And by the way, spoiler alert, I can't be here on the 11th because I'm on vacation. So if someone could pass this question. But obviously, the 13% could be we're increasing our rates at constant volume, or we think our volume is going to go up, at constant rate. If both those phenomenon continue, then arguably maybe you don't want to budget it, but it could be higher than the 13, 16 or whatever. So just understanding that, and to me, matching them up makes some sense, at least intellectually.
Yeah, I would like to see how he foresees this going forward because Jeff is correct. I mean, he sees more and more volume. And so, if he agrees that some sort of rate adjustment may be still appropriate, even though he has seen a lot more volume to offset, and if so, what would that
And
what would that rate change be? I don't think there's been a change in that rate for several years now. So I don't think it would be totally out of the question to revisit it, certainly. And I think that might be in some of the minds of the people on the Board of Selectmen as well.
well, I think the committee, when we met with them, I think we were all asking them essentially variants of the same question, which is, are you charging enough? Right. And we don't want to kill the golden goose, but are you charging enough? Because if your volume's going up at that level, it implies that you're not, right? That if you're stealing market share, then you can steal it on price, you steal it on volume. It sounds to me like we're stealing it on volume, but then we're getting hit with 16% on the other end to dispose of it.
Yeah, I think my last point on this, because I think it'll be a rich discussion, is kind of from a policy or a guidance or an objective standpoint. What is his objective in the budget for transfer station? Should it be we've been running at a net cost to the town of around 400,000, rising to 500,000? But this year, if we've overperformed the way Jen's analysis said, our deficit was down to 65,000. So there's two ways you can take this. One is to say that, you know what, our long-term goal is to be net zero, so that the transfer station's revenues equal the total cost of the transfer station for the town, which would be a huge win for the town. And I could easily argue that might be unrealistic. But that is zero kind of revenues matching expense the goal, or is your goal to stay at a loss or a
Constant
cost
loss.
like
Yeah.
400,000 or so? What's your goal? What are you trying to aim for on this? And we can have a discussion about
By the way, if you could stay at a constant loss, adjusted for inflation, you're winning. Even
Yeah.
that's a win.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we all agree that that's definitely something we want to discuss with him when we meet. As I was saying, the other area that had a noticeable increase was the building management went from 930,879 up to 101,862, a 12.3% increase. You know, I don't know that there's much can be done to really affect any change there per se. I know that he's recently mentioned that he's got some other air conditioning failures that have come up at town hall that he's going to have to address. So I definitely think we should at least, broach the subject and see what he has to say about where the whole building management budget is going to go. I have a suspicion, I think it's going to go up again. It's just, I don't think that's much of a question. It's just a more question of by how much. Does anybody have any other things that they'd like to mention with respect to operating type budgets? Okay, before we go into,
I think one topic has got to be GIAC or not GIAC, but Great Island, and what the operating expenses for Great Island infrastructure and public works are in the budget. Are they there? Are they in someplace else? Or how's that from a resources standpoint and a funding standpoint accounted for in the public works budget?
yeah, I think it's an appendix or something like that in the Great Island, the final version of the Great Island.
There is, Rolf, if you have it in front of you.
Yeah, it's estimated annual operational costs. So operations and maintenance, there's a number of different items here. I'll just read them off. Grounds, landscape, and site elements maintenance, 400,000. And this is all strictly in respect to the early access phase. Okay, not the later phases. Building care and maintenance, 75,000. Building utilities, water, electric, and gas, 25,000. Waste management and removal, 25,000. Subtotal, 525,000. Now, I believe our budget last year was $400,000. So assuming all of this to be reasonable and accurate, then that's going to be an increase, certainly. Then they go on to list all kinds of administrative costs for another 400,000. Now, Zagrodsky, I think, is gone on record that at this point in time, this is going to be a town managed effort. In other words, the only other person that I think they will engage outside of the town would be a, if you will, contract renewal with the consultant. And it would be a different type of arrangement because what they did for us in the past was helping us with the vision and coming up with the plan. But now there are some real specifics that are on the table to go forward with for early access. So they would help the town in drafting plans and bid specifications that would then go out for bidding and contracting. And so I think there's certainly going to be a consultant cost associated with that. Otherwise, my understanding from what I heard at the last Board of Selectmen meeting is that, this is going to be, and it's also mentioned under governance in the plan, that this is going to be a town controlled effort with the, given the high level of volunteerism that the town enjoys. So there would be a building committee similar to the building committees that we have for the schools. And that's how the thing would go, as I understand it, as it's been presented in the plan. Does that give you an idea of where the operating budget for the Great Island is possibly going?
But I don't know where he's planning on putting it next year. Is it going to go in public works, or is there going to be a separate operating fund for it? Because our revenue situation has changed significantly on Great Island, because in the past, the revenues were meant to offset the operating costs. We don't have the same level of revenues coming in. So is that in his budget process? Is that going into his budget, or is he building a separate operating budget that will be funded out of some other operating budget that will be put forth to the selectmen. So I'm just wondering what his plan is, how he's gonna treat it from a budget
Yeah.
standpoint.
No, I think we could certainly ask the question. I know from an accounting viewpoint, whatever is spent, they want to keep that in a separate account so that it doesn't get muddied in with other town expenditures. You know, they're gonna, from an accounting viewpoint, keep that separately accounted for. Now, how much of that though is actually within the public works budget that would be have to be tracked? That would be, I guess, the question with Ed, and it'd be interesting to see what he thinks. The other thing about Ed in this go forward with early access is that he will be asked to, if you will, audit, particularly from an engineering viewpoint, any plans that are put forth to make sure that they, in fact, make sense, that they can, in fact, be done in a realistic way, that we're not making up plans that are in a way unachievable, okay, or very, very costly. So he will be involved on that level, I'm sure.
Yeah, in that regard, I would comment we're really fortunate to have an engineer like Ed, who happens to be our director of public works. He plays that role, as you know, on most projects that involve buildings in town.
Yes,
Yeah.
Mark, if I might just add, this isn't really a budget in a sense, it's really an expense projection. We're missing the whole revenue side. I mean, there is no revenue side to Jeff's point. But I personally, I think without, and maybe this is a little bit off topic, but without really exploring what the governance model on Great Island is going to be, yeah, the town's going to be on the hook for maintaining the facility until the plan is adopted, and I think any projections out beyond that, I think, are sort of putting the cart before the horse, because I mean, I'm personal. Again, this is maybe going down the wrong road, but I personally thought that this was going. There was a lot made out of public-private partnership and how we're going to fund this, and what I've heard over the last, a couple of months, there hasn't been a lot about that, and how this is going to. And I don't expect it to cash flow itself, but I did expect when I voted for this thing that it wouldn't, all of the development on the property and all of that kind of stuff is going to be a little bit more balanced than what I've heard over the last couple of months. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of jawboning about this, as we go forward. But I think, all we can expect out of Ed is his best guess on what it's going to cost to maintain the what we have today before whatever construction goes beyond what we have so far.
Yeah, I share your concern and interest about the topic of governance. I've expressed myself about that numerous times, both verbally and in writing. And yeah, I think there's going to have to be more follow-up discussion about that as we start to go forward. Just a quick update, we bonded. It hasn't all been completely bonded yet, but it will be by April of next year, $91,771,367, of which remains available a remaining balance of $4,374,005. So that balance that remains there, with the way the bonding was engineered, if you will, it could be used for putting in island access related capital expenditures. So if we're going to have a driveway up and parking areas, it may work out that or a good portion of that could be covered with that balance. After that, we're talking about all new money for any sort of CapEx expenditures.
Right.
Okay,
I'll add that in discussions throughout the course of the GIAC engagement, the topic of governance and the development of project or projects down the road were often talked about together. The plan breaks the island up into several, I don't call them quadrants, but sections, and associated with each is a somewhat comprehensive list of opportunities, things that should be done to stabilize, for instance, the buildings that are to be retained, or to eliminate any that should be removed. And they're developed into steps or layers. And there was often discussion around, especially the bigger potential projects down the road, finding sponsors or organization to partner with, not just on the running of the particular area with a building or whatever, but also around governance, that have perhaps an organization organized to sponsor one of the developments, major developments on the island, and also in that context collaborate around governing it. So a lot remains to be seen, but that's a concept that was pretty constant, is trying to find sponsors or sponsorship, either on the concept or on the financial side, or both, and collaborating with the town on governance as those come together. Nothing on the table right now, because yes, there was big concern about funding this plan or portions of the plan much past the early access. The early access is something the town has partially as bonded, as you've commented, Rolf, and how much beyond that is needed, I'm not crystal clear until the jobs are designed, put out for bid. I would guess it's not enough that's left over.
Yeah. No, from what I've seen on the plan and what they're guesstimating for expenditures to satisfy the early access, it's definitely in excess of the $4,374,000 for sure. All right. Anybody else on any other points of interest or concern relating to operating budgets?
Well, just bringing it back to Great Island, though, from a public works operating budget, I'm glad that the decision has been taken to separate out the expenses and the costs and the management of Great Island. But it continues to be a concern of mine, and I think this committee has expressed this to Ed, that as this entire project, for lack of a better term, becomes more complex, it's going to tap and sap more of his time and expertise, and Tony's and everybody else in the departments. So again, I don't know what the answer is, but I want to make sure that I will certainly express that to him when we meet, to make sure that those numbers from an operating standpoint in the budget are, and Ed's pretty conservative about this, but this town has a history of underestimating operating budgets for facilities that it develops. And whether it's Highland Farm or wherever else, we way underestimated what it was going to cost to maintain that. And I don't want the same thing to happen here. So certainly when we meet with Ed, that'll be a line of questioning I hope that we'll spend some focus on.
I agree. I've had conversation with Jack Davis. He's aware of us having this meeting tonight and is also aware of the fact that, we're going to be meeting with Ed on September 11th. I've asked him to consider having someone from finance and budget be part of that meeting so that they can hear the questions we are raising, because I think a number of these questions should carry to both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance before we start going forward too quickly without understanding exactly what's happening in the expenditures and how that's going to affect. See, I'm not a fan of doing this out of the budget sequence for the simple reason that I don't think we're going to have it's going to be voted on separately without having a full update as to the impact to the overall budget that we would be addressing next year. I'd like to see the whole ball of wax, including whatever the numbers are for the Great Island, and before voting. That's my own feeling about it, but I don't think that's in the cards because
What do you mean by the whole ball of wax?
well, the entire town budget, the Board of Education, Town of Darien,
Yeah,
et
that's
cetera, et cetera,
unrealistic.
et cetera. Okay, I want to see it all, including what's in there for the Great Island before we make a vote, but I don't think that's in the cards. I think there's too much pressure to get going now. Okay. But that's my own feeling. All right.
Rolf, are you referring to the early access phase? I'm trying to understand what it is that would be coming in.
Well, yeah, the early access phase is what I would think would be, coming up in the coming year's budget, certainly. And so, Jack makes the point that, well, we've already figured that we could, with the projections that they had on debt, he said that a good portion of what's in the early access has already been factored into those projections, and that the town could float it without necessarily having outside money added. I don't know. I'd like to see it. The famous saying, what's it? I'm from whatever state. You have to show me. I'm more from that camp. But that's what I'm referring to. Jeff, put your sound on, Jeff.
I think we do have to keep the capital investment to go to the next phase separate from the operating budget because
Yeah.
we don't have an option on the operating budget. We own it. We got to take care of it. And I do think that kind of how Great Island operations are not actually from an operating standpoint separated from what Public Works does otherwise. So that's where it does have to be holistic. So we're not borrowing from Peter to pay Paul with
Right.
human resources, with people and time and equipment that, he's got that's a part of the Public Works obligation of the town. And so it's hard to carve it off.
Yeah, it's hard to segregate. I hear you. I understand. Well, then maybe we should move on to capital expenditures. Anybody want to lead off on capital expenditures? I tell you one thing that I'll bring up, and Ian isn't here tonight, I don't think, but it's one thing that he raised was the fact that the sidewalk rehabilitation, okay, or rather, excuse me, the paving townwide rather, but the rehabilitation for that matter as well, but not quite to the same extent. The numbers are flat. I mean, relatively speaking. I mean, the 25-26 budget was $1.4 million. The 26-27 in the 6-year plan was $1.432 million. Okay, so yeah, there's a little increase there, but it's not significant. He had a concern about any factoring for inflation relative to these kinds of expenditures, and I think it's just a question we would pose to Ed. I have a suspicion that in the case of paving, the dollars are really more subject to what the cost of the asphalt is, and that varies from season to season.
Actually, no, that's not the way that Ed's
Oh.
described it in the past. He's
Uh-huh.
described it more as a fixed budget, and then based on the price of paving and
Of the
asphalt,
asphalt,
it determines
okay.
how much you can
You
pay.
can do, right?
So it's really the budget doesn't
Right.
fluctuate with inflation or with the cost of asphalt as much as it does with our capital plan. If we want to be investing at a rate of inflation that is effectively fixed, then
Yeah.
we should be doing that.
I hear you, but he also has a goal every year of paving so many miles of road. So,
Yeah.
so I hear what you're saying about the calculation, but he also has to try and meet that I think it's 8 miles per year. So that he can pave every road in a matter of 10 years. And so he wants to also try and stick to that. So I guess he's trying to find a
20.
balance between all of that.
But the capital plan doesn't really reflect that. I mean, to Ian's point, it's like if you look at the 5 or 6 years out, I do capital plans for a living all the time. It's like you just never see one that's like dollar flat for 6 or 7 years
Right.
because all it implies is that you're going to do less and less, right?
Yeah, I think that's partly Ian's point.
Yeah, no, I think that is Ian's point, and so maybe last year we had an interesting vote on the capital plan, right? I it'd be interesting to suggest to him that maybe he should be putting inflation in the capital plan, and then maybe we should tell him like he should have an inflation adjuster for 25, 26, if that's what we're doing. That if he did 500,000 last year, he should be doing 565,000 or 530,000, whatever the heck that is. Because then otherwise, if he's the one angel kind of keeping capital expenditures for sidewalks, for example, constant for inflation, and the Board of Ed is increasing 15%, and all we're doing is basically taking a lower and lower part of the town budget every year for something that's important.
I think it's important to separate that. I think that's a good point, actually, but it's also important to separate roadway from walkways from an operation or from an annual budget standpoint, because particularly with sidewalks, as Ed has described, he hasn't been able to, for a variety of reasons, hasn't been able to spend what he's been allocated over the last year and a half, just because he's had difficulty finding contractors and getting things scheduled. Now, maybe that was rectified this year because we did a lot of West Avenue and we did a lot of other stuff. But I think one of his points of what is it, 500,000 on sidewalks, um, is constant. But that doesn't speak to the inflation point, and I think that's a very good point, because if
Yeah.
anything, the cost of materials and the cost of labor is going up. It's not going down.
So
Yeah.
But Patrick, wouldn't we push back on that? I mean, if we said as a group, or if we said as a town that we want to get twice as much, 3 times as much sidewalks done, and we said to Ed, look, we're giving you 9 months advance notice that here we are in September of 25, and we really, and for the year of July of 26 to June of 27, you've got 9 to 21 months to get this done. You need to find the resources to plan that and execute that. And I would just push back that that's a completely inelastic supply of labor, right? I mean, I'm obviously tipping my hand here. I think that this is one of the priorities that we need to encourage him to invest more in, because I think it's a priority for the town.
Well,
Right?
I agree. I think,
Consistently here.
yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Frank. But I'm looking at the replacement schedule, which is different than the expansion schedule. So if we're behind on the replacement schedule, and then just thinking about sidewalks, if we're behind on that, I agree with you. We ought to push and say, now you've got excess budget from past budgets. If anything, that means you got to spend more effort in making sure that we catch up to what we've missed over and I think Ed's mindful of that.
Right.
But and I think that's what you were talking about, is the replacement schedule as opposed to the expansion schedule. Yes.
No, I'm focused on both. I mean, I'm focused on.
Yeah, but the expansion schedule is totally different, because
Yep.
now that we've got this consultant coming in, God knows where this is going to go.
Right. But I think, again, this is our chance to say as a group that this is important to us, right? And I mean, Rolf, has Zagrodsky reached out to you and asked you for participation with this consultant?
Nope.
Because he said he would when he met with us a year ago.
Yeah, we're coming up on a year from that infamous meeting.
Right.
And no, he's not reached out to me at all.
Right. So again, this is our opportunity to make our priorities known. And I think it's important for us to kind of speak up pretty loudly and say, look, this is important to us. And so you know, I mean, again, I'm glad to go write a letter to John or to stop by his office and say that, you know, I mean, we know how much influence that's going to have, right? I think I'm a skeptic. But you know, that's what we need to do is to be very clear that this is a priority for us.
Well, look,
I think you're right. It's important, but I also think that Patrick makes a good point. There's a difference between the rehabilitation of the sidewalks and the roadway 20-year plan, cycle plan, and expansion. And so we talked about budgets being flat on the capital side for replacement and rehabilitation. And what I'm curious of, regardless of whether the budgets are flat, up, or down, is where are we in the replacement cycle on the sidewalks relative to, if I recall correctly, Rolf, you may know for sure, asphalt sidewalks used to be replaced every 20 years, I think it was, and the cement ones or concrete ones were generally on
Up to 30.
up to 30. So I don't know in absolute dollars based on what's been spent, where are we in that replacement cycle? Are we in fact a year behind, 2 years behind? Are we ahead? We all suspect we're behind, but that to me, that's the question. I don't know enough to know is 400,000 or 500,000 a year the right number. Same thing on the roadways, because I think who was talking, Jeff, and I think maybe Patrick were talking about, or maybe it was Rolf, about the budget and then the price of asphalt. And it does flex. How many miles get done flexes based on the price of the asphalt, because the budget is, at least we've observed in recent years, constant. And I've been watching this 20 years. I don't know for certain, are we in fact behind or ahead? The sidewalks, my casual observation is the sidewalk stock of existing sidewalks are in much better shape than they used to be. That's just a casual observer. They're wider, and many of them have been upgraded from asphalt to concrete. But I don't honestly know where we are in that cycle. And to me, that's the question. Ed would know. And instead of trying to pinpoint dollars and say we're behind or ahead because we're looking at a 6-year span. I've been doing this a long time. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. No, it's a good question, I think. So we should definitely have that as part of what we want to ask.
So maybe this is related to that, but he has a list and a prioritization of sidewalks, right? So if you're asking like, where are we, right? I would love to get out of him. Won't be at this meeting, but at some point is, what is the schedule for the sidewalks? Because that kind of speaks to Mark's point, which is, all right, this is what's up next, because this is when our records show it was last repaired. I feel like I haven't been part of this for a while, but just not having written him about one that's near and dear to my heart and gotten we have a list, I get the feeling that the list is in a closet and is a closely guarded secret. And it would probably, but it would probably speak directly to Mark's point, which is, what are your priorities? Why? And what's the cycle? Sorry. Yep.
And you're speaking about rehabilitation or
I may be, yeah, because I'm looking at rehabilitation, but I mean, in some cases, the rehabilitation I'm thinking about are like rebuilds.
Right.
Rebuilds.
Okay.
Yeah, they can turn into a rebuild, certainly. You know, if it's
some of that
old
bad.
enough and deteriorated enough, you know, he'll just pull it out and put in new.
Mark, I
But
mean,
I
if you
would-
walk down, you know, if you follow the path from our homes down to Middlesex along Hollow Tree, and you go not far from your house, you'll run into a sidewalk that is indistinguishable from the street. And then if you keep following down that side of it, I mean, it's all sorts of levels. I don't know when that was last repaired.
No, I walk that every day. You know I do.
Yeah.
Every day.
So, you know, so I think if he would share the schedule, that would kind of speak to Mark's point. Are we ahead or are we behind? Give us the detail.
Yeah, we've
Show us where you are.
Tony,
to be fair, I remember when that one was paved. So it may well be within the cycle. It just doesn't. Anyway.
we've been trying to get that list, and we get bits and pieces. And I know, Frank, you've sat in Ed's office and gone to, and it is a closely guarded secret we could argue that until the cows come home. To me, the bigger question I think we're sort of tiptoeing around is, what is the mindset? And we've got to get beyond this. We've hired the consultant and we're working on this and we're pushing it to the, we're working on it sort of answer from Jay-Z and everybody. You know, I mean, kudos to this committee for getting this to the forefront, or at least getting it on a list somewhere that we've got to start paying attention to our sidewalk stock. And I agree with you, Frank. This is the time to keep the pedal to the metal in terms of pushing ahead. And because we're not the only ones raising this issue, there are a lot of people around town that are raising this issue. And I think the more vocal we are, diplomatically vocal we are about it, I think that it's the squeaky wheel thing. And I think that's the only way it's going to get the funding. And we've talked about this now for a couple of years, and which is why it's important that we bring this up in this meeting. And I agree with you that we ought to bring it up to Ed, and just, it ought to be the number one. I was sort of holding fire until we got to the 6-year capital budget. Because if you look at that line item, there's absolutely zero on sidewalks. And,
Expansion.
it's
That
just
might be
wrong.
Christmas.
Yeah,
What we're
new
talking
sidewalks.
And we've talked about this before, and there's, well, we don't want to put anything on the page until we know, blah, 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 blah. Well, you know what? We want to know that money's going to be spent there. And now I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, because I think this 6-year capital thing that the state requirements are, and I'm not the only one in town that thinks this, is a load of hooey, because we're not committing to any of those, but it does show a commitment to something. And the fact that there's zero across that page for sidewalks, I think is wrong. It's just wrong.
Yeah. And one, just not to pile on, but I think in terms of a 6-year capital plan, which I think we should have one, especially for infrastructure, so that we can have visibility into this over time. We have a 6-year capital plan for roads, which basically declares a continuous investment in it. Our 6-year capital plan for sidewalks says we've got a punch list, and some years we do a little, some years we do less. I would be looking for a commitment to sidewalks and pedestrian infrastructure that's at the same, not the same monetary level, but the same level of long-term investment as our road. So we have a strategy for roads. We don't have a strategy for sidewalks, and I think we should. And since roads and sidewalks go together, I think that they should parallel each other out there over 6 years, so that we're making a long-term commitment that we're going to keep up with our pedestrian infrastructure.
The sidewalks are a non-negotiable part. The sidewalks are a non-negotiable part of our infrastructure maintenance. We don't fail to maintain the sewers. We don't fail to maintain the roads. We don't fail to maintain the public buildings.
It's got to be there year after year after year as a part of investment in the town.
Now, so are we saying that we'd want to see a number for this coming year in that new sidewalk line? And the reason I ask is an immediate pushback is going to be, well, you got to wait for the consultant.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a design year. And then look, that honestly, that might be fair. Maybe a consultant comes back recommendation, you got to design, you got to yada, yada, yada. So maybe it's a next year thing, but I'm asking, I think.
But we're telling Ed at the meeting in September, if it comes back to the number of 0, that's not acceptable.
Oh yeah, that, well, for new, right?
For new or for anything, right? I mean, to Jeff's point 5 seconds ago, right? We're making a continuous, we as a committee are telling you that we need a continuous investment in rehabilitation to keep sidewalks in good shape, and a continuous investment in expansion. Now, put a number down, right? It doesn't have to be, maybe it's going to get impacted later in the process, right? But we can't wait.
Put something in there in your initial budget. You should put X.
Right.
Discuss X.
And look, I'll say, we'll put in figure out what the total amount is to fill all the gaps and take care of everything in town, everything, all the expansion stuff, and give me, 1/5 of that, right? And is that going to be a big number? Sure, that's a big number. Let's have that as a starting point, because I don't want this to be the thing that's crowded out later in the process.
Can I?
I mean, I think there's been a number floated.
Frank has spoken.
I think there's been a number. Rolf, please. I think there was a number thrown out in some, and I'm not going to have a footnote for this, and I apologize, but the number that sticks in my head is $8 million of like, oh, if we just did everything, it'd be $8 million. Maybe that's right, and maybe that's wrong. Divide it by five. So let me see, 1.6 million for new sidewalks next year, right? In addition to whatever needs to get rehabbed and fixed and maintained, and then that's a starting point. People don't want to put 1.6 million in. Okay, let's do 1.4, 1.2, right? But it's not going to start from zero and have to claw for penny number one.
Yeah, I am concerned that it's going to be like the can that gets kicked down the road.
Again,
So
Only for 12 years now.
again, yeah, thank you, Patrick.
Carolyn,
you
you're
wanted
trying to
say
get a
something?
word in edgewise.
So, sorry, before we had a guest, so that's why it was noisy in my house. So I just want to say two things. The one thing is just when I look at the main budget, I'm concerned at how much the whole overall number rose in 3 years. And if I'm reading it correctly, it's like $1 million. Um, and where does that go? Or is it, just going up and up by this big rate for all that time? And, you know, yikes. And so if we're saying that sidewalks are our priority, which we've been saying all year, are we also prepared to say, okay, then you can cut here if you need to cut, but don't cut sidewalks? Is there anything that we feel could be downgraded in priority?
You want to do some horse trading?
And I don't know what it is. I mean, it's not the sewer, I don't
Yeah,
know,
no.
but
And
like, but I agree with your point that we can't start from zero or we won't get anything. It's better to start with a higher number and let it be whittled down. But I feel like something's got to give.
I'd be happy if at least there was just something that would be a start. If we can get a start on something and then build from there. But we don't even have a start.
and I think the challenge is that is that the reason we don't have even a starting point is because we haven't established yet what the criteria are going to be for the sidewalks. Where, I mean, if we wanted to put a sidewalk in front of every house and every building in this town, that's unrealistic. So where do you start, and the prioritization and all that kind of stuff. So I on the one hand, I understand why it's a zero. But on the other hand, I don't accept it because there's been such wide agreement that we have to do something. I think the challenge might just be in the budgeting process. You can't, I think they're reluctant to put numbers to a page where they don't really even know what the size of the challenges that we're trying to budget for is. So I sort of get that. But by the same token, there's also things on the 6-year capital plan that we don't know what the number's going to be. How much is it going to cost to redo the Holly Pond Dam in 2030? There's $100,000 in there. Well, I don't know what that number is, and whoever put that on there doesn't know what that number is. So then it begs the question: why do we put anything on there? So.
Patrick, it's interesting. The consultant's report on new sidewalks would be incredibly useful to that question, right?
It hasn't been done yet.
Correct. All right. So let's take a longer term view of this thing for a minute and say, all right, maybe if the consultant's report could come back and say, holy cow, you need $8 million, the number that's thrown out, of new sidewalks in this town, or this is the survey of what you have, right? That would be an incredibly useful tool to the people on this call to be able to advocate for an accelerated level of funding. Otherwise, what we're doing is we're clawing from zero, but we're not able to really define what it is you're trying to do. But that speaks to something someone said earlier, which is why isn't anyone in this committee or anyone with interest from the town representatives really been able to have a voice in shaping what the consultant's doing? For all we know, Zagrodsky says like, hey, they made me get a consultant. I need a low number. I've known John a long time. I would not think that's the way he operates, but how the hell do we know? Right? So, maybe we should be, if we take a little longer term view of this, of saying, hey, we would like to meet with a consultant. Or some of us, some designated subset of this group would like to have a daytime meeting with the consultant to find out what their remit is and provide some input. Because that study, properly done, I suspect would provide ammunition to all the arguments we've been making.
Why don't you call Jay-Z and ask him? I mean it.
I'll email.
I've asked, a number of us have asked, and
Anyone do it?
well, I think it's a, I don't know why, but I think there's a lot of balls in the air, lots of explanations. I don't think there's anything nefarious in any way. I think it's just a matter of attention and, everything in, municipal land happens at, slow speeds.
Glacial speeds.
I think vis-a-vis Ed, I think that's a good idea. Let's try to get that done in between the raindrops as we can. But one thing we know is Ed's not going to have a number or a result from the sidewalk consultant by the time he has to put a number on this piece of paper. And so I think the way I'd look at it with Ed is, so what's your plan? I mean, what are you going to do, knowing that you're not going to have that back? Are you not going to do anything? Or are you going to put in a placeholder number that you think you can get done next year? Because this could go 17 different ways, but we need a couple $100,000 of investment here. That can't be a bad thing. Ed, what's your approach on this? Because
Ed's not going to fight that fight.
Yeah.
He's not.
Yeah. I think he's
going to put whatever number.
I think he's going to say is, I'm waiting for the consultant.
It's going to be 0 until there's a number back from the consultant.
Yes.
That's my suspicion.
Right.
So when you hire
if that's his answer, then our
so in
response
hiring
is
a
that doesn't
consultant,
seem like a wise move.
I don't know that the consultant's been hired yet, but usually when you hire a consultant, there'll be a scope, and that scope will define how they're going to approach the project. It'll have a timeline. It'll have a deliverable date. I would think there'd be some input opportunities, but I don't know. And yeah, I would think that Ed is going to wait until
they've already hired the consultant.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
he's announced that he has.
The scope's already been done then. Okay. So there's a scope somewhere that has this.
Yeah, but the scope is sitting in some file somewhere and nobody's been able to see it.
Yeah, it's not public information as far as I know.
Okay, so we'll have a discussion on sidewalks.
Yeah, I mean, we have the right.
Anything else in the capital plan that we should talk about?
Anything else? Did you say?
Yeah.
Well, the salt box drainage project is down there listed at $6.7 million. So I'd like to just get from Ed, a reconfirmation on that number, or if it's different, or if he suspects it's going to be different. I'd certainly like to know what it is, because that's a big number. And I'd like to know the timing of where he is with that. My understanding is he should be ready to finalize all of the documents and specifications so he can generate a RFP, request for proposal, and broadcast that by the end of this year or early next year, January. So he may say, no, the 6.7 is still good as far as I know. But of course, it would be subject to, putting out the RFP and seeing what comes back from an actual bid. But I still want to ask the question.
Let's just stop right there. We just talked about 6.7 million, and what was the number? The wish list on the sidewalk expansion, was it? What was your number, Frank? 8 million divided by
8. 4? Yeah, he threw out 8.
Yeah, I heard it was 8 million.
And you wanted 4 years? So was that 2 million a year? I think you said 5.
I said 1.6 million, but yeah, either way.
And to Carolyn's point, we just not proposed, but talked about, what's that, $9 million in projects. Are we cannibalizing ourselves with capital items to add on there. I just thinking out loud here. I'm thinking, wow,
Yeah,
wow.
exactly. Wow. That's why I'm concerned with all these pieces
Mm-hmm.
that,
It's a valid concern.
We're gonna have to find sponsors for the sidewalks.
that's not a bad
You can
idea.
definitely find sponsors for sidewalks.
They can do a lot of interesting things with, stamping cement, we could maybe come up with something we can stamp your name into the sidewalk.
It's like that brick program, right?
Really
Yeah, someone
big
just-
bricks.
Yeah, you got a what's that? 1 yard by 1 yard square of concrete. You don't have to put your hands in, right? But we'll stamp your name on the edge.
All right. Does anybody else have anything else with respect to capital expenditures?
But minor point on Saltbox. So it's $6.7 million, right? I just noticed in the plan we have 25,000 a year for something called the Town Hall Bridge Spec Repair. So it seems like, and I've seen this a lot, if you have a project that's $6.7 million, you usually have to spend X amount in design, consultant, engineering, whatever the heck it is.
Yep.
Before you spend the $6.7 million. And yet we've actually been presented with a budget for saltbacks of 0. So one question would
I'm
be,
sorry.
well, the saltbox,
Yeah, repeat that.
the saltbox number for this year is 0.
I think it was in a prior, I think that
Miraculously.
the design, the scoping and design was in a prior year.
Yep.
As a special appropriation.
And it's fully done. We're just
Done.
Funded.
No, it's not. It's just not it's not in an operating. It was done as a as a an authorized expenditure. It didn't flow directly into the budget.
got it. The point is that there's not $100,000, for example, to be spent this year on figuring out 6.7 for next year. That's already in the can.
Yep.
Got it. Okay.
A couple of years ago.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
few years ago. Yep.
Yeah.
But Jeff's exactly right. That's the process. You fund a plan or a design, and then out of that pops a project and something more tangible than to go and get approval for and bonding for.
Okay. Any other CapEx comments, areas, interests of concern?
Well, if I'm recalling, I mean, I don't know if this falls under our remit, but don't we have multiple fire engine replacements that are in the pipeline? These are like multi-year projects.
Yeah,
They're on the order of several $100,000 is my recollection.
More than that, I think.
Close to $1 million.
Yeah.
Million.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't
Buying
shot for a
fire-
fire engine in a long time. Sorry.
That was
Yeah,
the old
buying
days.
fire
Frank.
engines are
Back in
now
the old days.
million dollar propositions.
Yeah.
Or more, depending on what type of equipment you're buying.
And
But
that discussion went very similar to our sidewalk rehabilitation conversation, where they got a forecast and plan for them and anticipate, and there should be a schedule, and they should be coordinated around the 3 fire departments. Those of you that listened in, to that budget, it's not the same conversation, but the theme is the same. Let's plan and budget and have a long-term vision of what we're trying to do. Because
All right, I
it's coming. It's not going away, and it's only getting more expensive.
Yeah, and I think it's valid that we make that point to Ed that we think this deserves similar attention.
Mhm.
All right, excellent. All right, I'm just going to move on quick. If anybody has any presentation or update on any of the focus areas per se, I know that the Rings End Dam Bridge and the Rings End Dam itself is progressing along.
Easy.
Yeah. I mean, it's coming along, and I think that they're going to have it done on schedule. The thing is, it's still an unknown as to whether or not the federal Department of Environmental Protection, I believe it is going to really cover the cost. I know Ed and Darren Ostafane have had numerous discussions and meetings and numerous questions that they've answered over and over and over again with them, but they still say that we are not yet committed to cover the cost until we have all of the final as-built details upon completion of the project. So I'll just mention that's still in progress, and we still don't really have a firm fix on how much the town would be on the hook for per se.
Rolf, thanks for that. Can I just ask one last thing about that project, which boggled my mind? Has there been any, I guess we were told that they had made a lot of effort in the beginning to try and locate who the theoretical legal owners of this dam were. And
Yeah.
since that was not determinable, we're kind of proceeding on the assumption that we are responsible for this no matter no matter who the owner is, we kind of have a responsibility to maintain. I just was wondering if there's been any further effort or further progress made in figuring out who the owners actually are.
Not to my knowledge. I know that that legal counsel did quite a bit of investigation to try and track down, families from the past in the town of Darien. I think they were only really able to firmly identify one family out of like 6 families that were involved with that dam when it was done way back in the day. The lease has expired, and
Right.
the lease has not been renewed because we don't really have anybody to renew it with.
Better know who we're renewing with.
Okay, so the problem with the dam occurred just shortly, maybe a year or less before the lease expired. Okay, so technically, yes, we are on the hook with the lease now expired to do the work. After that, I have no idea, but hopefully this work is going to last for a long time, and I may be in the ground by the time that has to be addressed again. Okay.
Rolf, no one here is rushing that, please.
Yes,
Let's not,
thank you, Frank. Appreciate that.
And my understanding from the discussion was once legal counsel made the determination that we should proceed and that I was under the impression that no further efforts were going to be made to try to ascertain the ownership, that legal opinion was all everybody needed to just pull the trigger and go forward.
That's my understanding as well. Otherwise, we wouldn't have moved forward, right?
Yeah.
Well, completely agree. I've no question about the legitimacy or the necessity of the project. We absolutely should be doing what we're doing, and I'm grateful that they made that decision. Any other further question not germane. So I'm glad to drop it there. Thank you.
I'll just make the comment: the scale of that project is beyond what I comprehended when it was tossed about. I've been watching what they're doing there. When I compare that to the little bridge over on Hanson. Apples and oranges.
Yeah, there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
There's a lot to it.
Yep.
All right, if there isn't anything else, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. I want to thank everybody for coming to this meeting. I know that this was an unscheduled meeting, a special meeting, but looking back on all of the things that we covered tonight, I think it was productive, and I thank you for that. And so, yes,
Rolf, we thank you for continuing to hold our feet to the fire, even if we're not particularly responsive as a group. Thank you very much.
Yep.
All right, so
thank you for forwarding the materials of Rolf.
Yeah, I encourage everyone, if you haven't had a chance to read some of those materials, please do before we meet with Ed, because there's some interesting information there that we're going to cover with him. All right, so I have a motion from Mark. Do I have a second? I need a second from Frank. All those in favor of adjourning, raise your hands. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much and enjoy your evening.
Adios.
Take care. Good night.